Nature was the first thing the Nimbus-Global Corporation bought. They didn't just want the land or the water, they wanted the sky. In the vertical slums of the mid-Atlantic sprawl, the weather isn't a natural occurrence, it's a subscription service. If you pay your climate tax, you get temperate sun and gentle breezes. If you default, or worse, if you join the resistance, Nimbus-Global initiates the storm sanction. We watched as entire rebel districts were erased by localized F5 tornadoes or buried under 10 feet of flash-frozen nitrogen snow in the middle of July. They didn't need to send an army to crush us, they just turned the atmosphere into a weapon. To the board of directors, a hurricane was just a very efficient way to liquidate unprofitable assets. They believed that by controlling the wind and the rain, they had achieved the ultimate high ground. They assumed that a man who was being drowned by his own sky would never have the breath to fight back. They thought the clouds were an impenetrable fortress. They assumed that because their Atmos-Spires were shielded by high-voltage lightning grids, no ground-based force could ever reach the control core. They believed that by weaponizing the very air we breathe, they had made the revolution a physical impossibility. They were catastrophically wrong. They forgot that lightning doesn't just strike from the top down. Sometimes, it rises from the mud. They assumed we were afraid of the thunder. They forgot that if you spend your whole life being hunted by a storm, you eventually learn how to ride the bolt. If Nimbus-Global wanted to use the sky to drown our voices, we decided to give them a thunderclap that would shatter their windows. We created the Ground Zero Protocol. And we birthed the 11th Atmospheric Combat Unit, the Stormbreakers. We don't use standard aircraft. In a sky controlled by Nimbus-Global, anything that flies is just a target for their lightning snipers. Instead, we use Faraday rigs, heavy, grounded exosuits lined with superconducting copper mesh that can absorb and redirect millions of volts. Our weapons aren't designed for stealth. We carry lightning rods, tungsten spears that act as portable capacitors, catching the corporation's own artificial strikes and throwing them back at their enforcers. We don't fight for the ground, we fight for the pressure valves. We are the only warriors in the galaxy who see a hurricane as a tactical transport system. We are the Stormbreakers and we're about to short-circuit the heavens. I am Elias Bolt Vane. My Faraday rig is currently vibrating with the static of a dozen nearby air ionization nodes, and the ozone scent inside my helmet is thick enough to choke on. I am standing on the exterior hull of the Atmos-Spire, 6 miles above the ocean, and I'm about to break the weather. The ascent was a journey through the mouth of a god. We didn't climb, we used grav hooks to hitch a ride on the very tornadoes the corporation had sent to destroy our base. The wind was a horizontal wall of gray water and debris, moving at 400 miles per hour. My armor groaned under the sheer kinetic pressure, the hydraulic joints screaming as they fought to keep my limbs attached. Stormbreakers, check your grounding. The Skylords are dropping from the upper clouds. They're using the lightning flashes for cover. I roared over the acoustic link. The Skylords were Nimbus-Global's elite aerial enforcers. They wore silver arrow plates and used high-pressure turbine wings to move through the storm with a grace that was almost insulting. They didn't use guns, they used ion lances, weapons that drew power directly from the surrounding storm clouds. Breach the grid. Catch the strike. A bolt of jagged violet-white lightning lanced down from a nearby turbine, aimed directly at my chest. I didn't dodge. I raised my lightning rod. The electricity hit the tungsten tip with a sound like the world splitting in half. My HUD went white for a microsecond as my Faraday rig absorbed the surge, the superconducting conduits glowing a brilliant neon blue. Return to sender. I thrust the spear forward, releasing the stored energy in a single massive arc. The blue bolt hit a Skylord mid-flight, his silver armor turning into a white-hot cage as his internal electronics vaporized. He didn't fall. He was simply unmade, his body dissolving into a cloud of ash that was instantly swept away by the gale. Sarah. The pressure coils. Jax, watch the vortex. Sarah dived toward the primary intake vents of the Spire, her pressure jammers glowing with a dull orange light. The Spire worked by manipulating local air density. If we could jam the coils, the artificial hurricane would lose its center and collapse inward. I've got the lock. Elias, the turbines are starting to reverse. Sarah yelled, her voice barely audible over the subsonic roar of the wind. The corporation realized the threat. The Atmos-Spire began to vibrate, its internal magnets spinning up to create a flash freeze zone. The temperature dropped 60 degrees in 3 seconds. The rain turned into jagged shards of ice that shredded the outer layers of our rigs. My visor began to frost over, the heater coils struggling to keep my vision clear. They're trying to freeze the hydraulics. Keep moving. I sprinted across the rain-slicked metal of the spire's crown. The Skylords were desperate now, throwing themselves at us in a frantic swarm. One enforcer landed on my back, his ion lance cutting deep into my shoulder plating. I felt the bite of the energy, the heat of the blade fighting the cold of the storm. I didn't try to pull him off. I slammed my back against a glowing climate pylon. Karachik. The electrical feedback from the pylon traveled through my Faraday rig and directly into the enforcer's chest. He shrieked as his turbine wings exploded, the force of the blast throwing us both apart. I rolled across the deck, my mag boots catching a structural rib just before the wind could take me. Jax. Blow the core. Jax, a mountain of a man in a double-insulated Goliath frame, reached the central turbine. He didn't use a bomb. He used a gravity well, a device that created a localized point of infinite weight. He jammed it into the rotating blades of the main fan. The sound was absolute. The massive turbine, designed to move millions of cubic meters of air, hit the gravity well and shattered. 10-ton blades of reinforced carbon fiber were flung into the storm like shrapnel, slicing through the remaining Skylords and tearing open the Spire's primary containment deck. The vortex is breaking. Get to the interior. The artificial hurricane, deprived of its central engine, began to unravel. The wind didn't just stop, it rebounded. A massive shockwave of air slammed into the Spire, the structure groaning as the anti-gravity pylons failed. We dived through the shattered hull and into the control room. The weather wizards, the corporate technicians who had played God from their comfortable leather chairs, looked at us with a terror that no storm could match. They were surrounded by screens showing the destruction they had wrought, and now the destruction had come for them. I didn't say a word. I raised my lightning rod and drove it into the primary console. The blue energy of the Spire's power grid flooded the room. The screens shattered, the neon lights exploded, and the Atmos-Sovereign AI let out a dying electronic scream. Outside, the gray clouds began to dissipate. The artificial lightning stopped. The rain settled into a gentle, natural drizzle. I stood in the center of the dark control room, my armor hissing as the cooling fans fought the heat of the battle. I pulled off my helmet, the cold, fresh air hitting my face. It didn't smell like ozone or scorched metal. It smelled like the sea. It smelled like a world that belonged to itself again. Sarah and Jax walked up behind me, their rigs battered and scarred, but their eyes bright. We looked through the viewport. Below us, the storm sanction over Sector 7 was over. The sun was breaking through the clouds, its golden light hitting the water for the first time in years. The people below were emerging from their bunkers, looking up at a sky that was no longer a weapon. Sarah. Jax, look at the horizon, I whispered, my voice echoing in the silent room. I'm here, Bolt. It's quiet. I'd forgotten what the sun looked like through the mist. Still standing. The Skylords are gone. The weather is ours now, boss. And the forecast looks like trouble for Nimbus-Global. I looked at the broken lightning rod in my hand. It was just a piece of metal now. The gods of the sky had been pulled from their thrones, and the clouds were once again the property of the wind. We had walked into the heart of the storm, and we had proven that no matter how much you charge for the rain, you can never own the lightning. We walked toward the emergency shuttles, leaving the silent, darkened Spire behind us. The weather wizards were dead, their magic proven to be nothing more than expensive machinery. The corporate shadow war had claimed another fortress, and for the first time in history, the people of the sprawl didn't need to check their bank accounts to see if it was going to rain. The storm has broken. The sky is silent. The sun has returned to the world below.